Got a call from a lawyer on a Tuesday morning. The call came while she was sitting in her college dorm room, drinking bad coffee and trying to finish a history essay. The lawyer said that her grandmother had died 3 weeks ago, did not know her grandmother very well. The woman lived far away in a small town that had visited only twice in her entire life, but the lawyer had important news. Her grandmother left her something in her will. She left the Sunset View Motel. Asked the lawyer if this was some kind of joke. The lawyer said no, it was real. The motel was real and it was now's property. The lawyer sent papers for her to sign, read through them slowly. The motel was built in 1974. It sat on a highway in the middle of nowhere. The property had no mortgage, it was fully owned, and now it belonged to. Her parents called her that night. Her mother was angry. She said that she'd sell the motel right away. She said it was worthless and would only cause problems. Her father said less, but he agreed. He said the motel had been abandoned for 5 years. He said nobody in the family knew why. Whenever asked about the motel when she was younger, the adults would change the subject. Now she was 18 years old and the motel was hers. Decided to see it for herself before making any decisions. She stopped going to classes for a week. She told her professors she was sick. She packed a bag and drove her old car for 6 hours down empty highways until she reached the small town where the motel stood. The place looked like it had been frozen in time. The roads were empty. The shops on the main street were mostly closed. Signs hung in windows that said going out of business and for lease. The motel sat at the edge of town, just off the main highway, turned onto the cracked pavement of the parking lot. The building was bigger than she expected, but it looked like it was dying. The paint was peeling off the concrete walls in long strips. The roof was missing shingles. The neon sign out front that once said Sunset View Motel was dark and broken. Only half of the letters still worked. The sign now read Sun TV Moat. Parked her car and got out. The wind blew across the empty parking lot. She was completely alone. There were no cars except hers. There were no people anywhere. She walked to the office door and pushed it open. The door creaked on its hinges. Inside the office, everything was exactly as it had been left 5 years ago. Dust covered every surface. A calendar hung on the wall with the date stuck on March 2019. Papers sat on the desk in messy piles. Some of them had turned yellow. A coffee mug sat on the counter with liquid inside that had turned black and hard. Photographs hung on the walls showing families smiling at the camera. They looked like they were from 30 years ago. Walked through the office slowly. She found a door that led to a hallway. The hallway was long and dark. Windows were boarded up with wooden planks. The only light came from the gaps between the boards. Walked down the hallway and looked into each room. Most rooms were empty. The beds were gone. The furniture was gone. Only stains on the carpet remained where things had once been. Some rooms smelled like mold and death. Could not understand why her family had owned this place. It was worthless now. It was a shell of nothing. She walked deeper into the motel. She came to a section on the west side of the building. This section looked different. The doors looked newer. The chains and padlocks were not rusted like the rest of the motel. Someone had been here recently. Someone had taken care of this area while the rest of the motel rotted. Came to a door marked room 237. This room had a heavy chain wrapped around the door handle. The chain was connected to a padlock. The lock was shiny and new. It looked like it had been installed just weeks ago, not years. Pushed on the door, but it would not open. The chain was too strong. She put her ear against the door and listened. At first she heard nothing. Then she heard it. A sound from inside the room. A tapping sound. It was mechanical and rhythmic. Tap, tap, tap. It sounded like something was moving inside the locked room. Something was moving and making that tapping noise. Stepped back, her heart was beating fast. Nobody should be here. The motel was abandoned. But something was clearly inside room 237. Something was alive or something was running. She did not know which possibility was worse. Decided to explore the rest of the motel first. She walked back down the hallway and found a door that led outside. She walked around the back of the building. Behind the motel, she found a maintenance shed. The door to the shed hung open. Inside were old tools. She found bolt cutters. They were heavy and covered with rust, but they still worked. The blades were sharp enough to cut through chain. Carried the bolt cutters back to room 237. She felt nervous and scared, but she was also curious. Her grandmother had owned this motel. Her grandmother had locked something in this room. Her family did not want to talk about what happened here. Now was going to find out what the secret was. She positioned the bolt cutters around the chain and pressed down hard. The chain resisted at first, then it snapped. The chain fell to the ground with a loud noise, picked up the chain and threw it aside. She took a deep breath. She put her hand on the door handle and turned it slowly. The door was not locked. Only the chain had held it closed. The door swung open slowly. Inside the room saw something that did not make sense. The walls were covered with metal panels. The panels were dark and seemed to absorb light. In the middle of the room stood a machine. It was tall and shaped like a cylinder. It had lights on it that glowed blue and white. The machine was the source of the tapping sound. Stepped into the room. The air felt warm. The floor was clean, not dusty like the rest of the motel. Someone had been taking care of this room. Someone had been maintaining this machine. Walked closer to the machine. The tapping sound stopped when she entered the room. Sat on the floor of room 237 and opened her grandmother's journal. She read every word carefully. The entries started on March 15, 2019. Her grandmother had written about something falling from the sky. It was not a plane or a helicopter. It was something else, something that did not belong to any country on Earth. The journal said that the object landed behind the motel in the middle of the night. His grandmother was awake because she could not sleep. She looked out her window and saw a bright light. She went outside to investigate. That was when she met them. They were not human. The journal described them as tall and thin with skin that looked like metal but moved like muscle. They had too many joints in their arms. They had eyes that were not exactly eyes, but they could speak English. They told her that they were refugees. They were running from something. They were running from an empire that wanted to kill them all. Read that her grandmother made a decision very quickly. She could have called the government. She could have called the military. She could have told the police. But instead, she let them hide in the motel. She gave them food. She gave them water. She gave them clothes that would help them look more human. Then she helped them hide their ship. The ship had crashed when it arrived on Earth. It was damaged beyond repair, but it still had its communication equipment. The refugees asked her grandmother if she could help them build something. They wanted to build a way to contact other survivors. Other members of their species had escaped the empire. Other refugees were hiding on Earth, but they had no way to communicate with each other. So's grandmother said yes. She said she would help them build a communication relay, a machine that could send signals across space. The refugees had the technology. Grandmother had the labor and the resources. Together, they spent weeks building the device inside room 237. Grandmother's later entries became more nervous. She wrote about government agents who were asking questions. She wrote about helicopters that flew over the motel. She wrote about fearing that they would be discovered. But she also wrote about the refugees becoming her friends. She wrote about their stories. She wrote about their families that were dying across the galaxy. She wrote about children who were being killed because they belonged to the wrong species. The most important entry was dated the day before his grandmother died. It said, "I know they are coming for me. I know they have figured out what I have done. But I do not regret my choice. Humanity must be better than those who came before us. We cannot be a species that hides while others suffer. If we are to survive among the stars, we must choose to be brave. We must choose to protect the helpless. That is what makes us human." Closed the journal and cried. She did not cry because she was sad. She cried because she understood. Her grandmother had risked everything to help creatures that nobody on Earth knew existed. Her grandmother had hidden them. Her grandmother had built a machine to save their lives. Spent the next hour exploring the device. She did not understand all of it. Some of the technology was too strange, but she could see that it was broken. It was not working anymore. The blue and white lights that had been tapping were now still. The machine was dormant. Realized something. The device had been calling for help. The tapping sound was a distress signal. The machine had been sending a message out into space, trying to reach the refugees, trying to tell them that Earth was ready. But the message had gone unanswered for 5 years. She touched the metal panels on the wall. They were warm. She touched the device itself. The metal felt almost like skin. It was smooth and warm and alive, even though it was powered down. Sat in front of the device and opened her grandmother's journal again. She read every single page. She read about the refugees' names. She read about their hopes and their fears. She read about the day that military agents came to the motel and arrested her grandmother. She read that her grandmother had not fought them. She had gone peacefully. She had told the agents to take her. She said nothing about the refugees. She said nothing about the device. The last entry in the journal was a letter to, though had not known it when she first read it. Her grandmother had written it knowing that one day would find this room. Her grandmother had written it knowing that the choice would pass to the next generation. The letter said, "If you are reading this, then I am gone. I am sorry to leave you with this burden, but I am also proud to pass it to you. You are young and strong, you have your whole life ahead of you. This device, this machine, it is more important than any building or any money. It represents a choice. Every day I chose to help creatures that nobody knew existed. Every day I chose to risk my own safety for their survival. I chose to be a protector instead of a bystander. Now that choice belongs to you. You can destroy this device and pretend you never found it. You can call the government and tell them about it. Or you can do what I did. You can choose to be brave. You can choose to help them. You can choose to protect life instead of destroy it. Whatever you choose, I will love you. But I hope you will choose to be like me. I hope you will choose to help. Closed the journal and stood up. She looked at the device. She looked at the metal panels. She looked at the glowing lights that were powered down. She understood now why her family did not want to talk about the motel. They knew what her grandmother had done. They knew she had broken laws to help aliens. They knew she had gone to prison to protect them. But's grandmother had died anyway. She had died in prison, keeping the secret, protecting the refugees, ensuring that nobody would find out about the device. She had taken the burden to the grave. Now that burden belonged to. She had to make the same choice her grandmother had made. She had to decide if she was brave enough to help creatures from another world. She had to decide if she was willing to risk everything, just like her grandmother had. Walked out of room 237 and closed the door behind her. She did not lock it. She did not put the chain back. She walked back to her car and sat inside it. She held her grandmother's journal in her hands. She looked at the broken motel around her. She had come here to decide if she should sell the property. Now she knew that selling was not an option. Her grandmother's choice had become her choice. The refugees' survival depended on what decided to do next. She had 48 hours to make her decision. After that, she would have to return to college. Spent 3 days in a cheap hotel in town. She did not leave her room. She read her grandmother's journal over and over again. She read it so many times that she could recite passages from memory. She understood that her grandmother had made a choice based on what she believed was right. Her grandmother had decided that protecting life was more important than following laws. On the 4th morning, made her decision. She drove back to the motel and went directly to room 237. She did not hesitate this time. She knew what she had to do. She would help the refugees. She would keep her grandmother's secret. She would restart the device and try to contact whoever was out there waiting for a signal from Earth. Spent the next week learning about the device. She found manuals hidden inside a metal box beneath the floor. The manuals were written in English, but they contained technical information that was difficult to understand. There were diagrams showing how to restart the machine. There were instructions for activating the communication relay. She also found something else. In the same metal box, she found a disc. The disc was labeled in her grandmother's handwriting. It said, "For instructions for restart, authorization code for contact." Knew she was not supposed to touch the device alone. She knew she should call someone. She should call a scientist or an expert. But she also knew that was impossible. She could not trust anyone. If she told anyone about the device, they would report it to the government. The government would come and destroy everything. The government would capture the refugees. Had no choice but to proceed alone. She was 18 years old and she was about to restart an alien communication device in an abandoned motel. It seemed impossible, but her grandmother had done impossible things, had inherited more than just the motel. She had inherited her grandmother's courage. She inserted the disc into a slot on the device. The machine hummed. Lights began to glow on its surface. They went from red to yellow to green. The tapping sound started again. This time, the sound was louder and faster than before. The device was waking up after 5 years of sleep. Stepped back, she was terrified. The machine was getting hotter. The metal panels on the wall began to glow. The air in the room felt thick and heavy. For a moment, thought something was wrong. She thought the device might explode or collapse or do something terrible. Then everything stopped. The lights turned blue and steady. The tapping sound became a soft humming. The machine was alive again. It was running. It was searching for the refugees. That night could not sleep. She stayed in room 237 and watched the device work. She watched the lights pulse. She watched the holographic display that appeared above the machine. The display showed symbols that she did not understand. But she knew the device was sending signals. It was reaching out across space. It was trying to find the refugees. On the second day, something changed. The holographic display showed a new symbol, a symbol that looked like a response. The device began making a different sound, Not tapping, not humming, a sound like singing, a sound that was almost beautiful. Heard a voice. The voice was not coming from the device. The voice was coming directly into her mind. The voice spoke in English and said, "Earth receiver, we detect your signal. We have been searching for you for 5 years. We thought this station was destroyed. We thought you were dead." Tried to speak, but no sound came out of her mouth. She realized the aliens could read her thoughts. The machine was connecting her mind directly to the refugee collective across space. She thought about who she was. She thought about her name and her age. She thought about her grandmother and the choice her grandmother had made. The refugees seemed to understand. They sent her a message that was made of feelings and images instead of words. They showed her what had happened. They showed her the day her grandmother had died in prison. They showed her the moment that her grandmother's cell door closed for the last time. They showed her that her grandmother had carried the secret of the device until the very end. She had never told anyone. She had never betrayed the refugees. She had died protecting them. The voice in his mind said, "Your grandmother was brave. She was different from most humans we have met. Most humans care only about themselves and their own species. Your grandmother cared about creatures she did not know. She died for us. Are you like her?" Did not think about her answer, she simply felt it. She felt that, yes, she was like her grandmother. She felt that she would be brave. She felt that she would help. The refugees sent her gratitude through the connection. They explained what had happened to them. They explained that the military had killed most of their people 5 years ago. Millions of refugees had died. But thousands had survived and hidden on Earth. They had been living in secret in abandoned buildings and remote locations. They had been waiting for this signal. They had been hoping that someone would restart the device. With the device now active, the refugees could locate each other. They could organize. They could work together to survive. They could eventually escape Earth and find safety somewhere else in the galaxy. The refugees told something important. They said that humanity was different from most species in the galaxy. They said that humans had the capacity for sacrifice and compassion. They said that her grandmother had proven something important. She had proven that humans were capable of protecting other species. She had proven that humans could choose to be brave instead of afraid. The refugees asked if she would become their new protector. They asked if she would help them survive. They asked if she would carry on her grandmother's work. Felt tears on her face. She did not know if she was crying because she was sad or because she was scared or because she understood the weight of what she was being asked to do. She knew that her life would change forever. She knew that she would have to keep this secret for the rest of her life. She knew that she might end up in prison like her grandmother. She knew that she might die without anyone ever knowing what she had sacrificed. But she also knew that she could not say no. She could not abandon the refugees. She could not betray her grandmother's memory. She could not be the kind of person who stood by and did nothing while others suffered. Thought a simple message back to the refugees. She thought, "I will help you. I will do what my grandmother did. I will be brave." The device hummed with a sound that might have been celebration. The refugees sang a song that's mind could interpret as joy and hope. The signal spread out across the galaxy, reaching refugee hiding places scattered across the solar system. The message was simple. It said, "Earth remembers us. Earth will help 3 months past, did not go back to college. She dropped out of her classes and told her parents that she had decided to take a break from school. She told them she needed time to figure out what she wanted to do with her life. Her parents were not happy, but they accepted her decision. They did not know about the motel. They did not know that was spending every moment there. Used the time to learn everything about the device. The refugees helped her understand the technology. They sent her information through the holographic interface. They showed her how to maintain the machine. They explained what each light meant and what each sound represented. Slowly, became an expert on equipment that came from another world. She also used the time to visit other locations. The refugees told her about hidden stations around the world. They told her about underground bunkers and abandoned buildings where equipment similar to the Motel device had been hidden. They told her that there were at least 10 other communication relay stations hidden across the planet. Traveled to these locations. She found an old subway tunnel beneath a city in the east. She found an abandoned factory in the Midwest. She found a hidden cave system in the mountains. In each location, she found equipment that was the same as the device in room 237. All of it was powered down. All of it was waiting to be activated. Realized something important. Her grandmother had not worked alone. There were other humans who had helped the refugees. other people who had hidden equipment and protected refugees from government discovery. Her grandmother was part of a larger network, a secret organization of humans who had decided to help. The refugees confirmed this. They told that her grandmother had been part of a group called the Protectors. There were about 200 protectors spread across the world. They had dedicated their lives to helping the refugee network survive. Most of them had died or been captured by the government. Her grandmother was one of the last ones who had survived for so long. Decided to search for any surviving protectors. She used the relay stations to send out a message. She did not know if anyone would respond, but she had to try. She had to find out if her grandmother's organization was still alive. Within a week, someone responded. The response came through the relay station in the mountain cave system. It was a message from a woman named, was 63 years old. She had been a protector for 30 years. She had known's grandmother. She had worked with her. She could tell things that were not written in the journal. Met in person at a diner in a small town. Was older and tired-looking, but her eyes were sharp and intelligent. She ordered coffee and told the truth about her grandmother. Said that grandmother had not been captured by accident. She had been betrayed. Someone inside the protector network had given information to the government. Someone had revealed the location of the motel. The military had come and arrested grandmother. But by that time, the refugees had already escaped. They had fled to hiding places all over the world. The government had found the device too late to stop the relay network from being established. Said that's grandmother knew she was going to be arrested. She prepared for it. She made sure that all the information about the relay network was secure and hidden. She made sure that her grandson would find the journal and understand what had happened. She was willing to go to prison to protect the refugees because she believed that sacrifice was the price of protection. Told that she and the other surviving protectors had been waiting for the device to be reactivated. They had been waiting for the next generation to find the truth. Now that had taken over, they could finally continue their work. The refugee network could start rebuilding and expanding. Explained that the protectors had a larger plan. They did not just want to help the refugees hide. They wanted to eventually bring the refugee situation to the attention of the world. They wanted to prove that aliens existed. They wanted to force the government to recognize refugee rights under international law. They wanted to change how humanity treated those who were different. But this plan would take time. It would take years or even decades. It would require careful planning and patience. Most importantly, it would require activating all the relay stations around the world. It would require rebuilding the network that had been damaged by arrests and government operations. Asked if she was ready for this responsibility. She said that would have to give up her entire life. She said that would have to stay at the motel and maintain the relay station. She said that would probably never have a normal relationship or a normal family because her secret would always come first. Did not hesitate. She said yes. She said she understood what she was accepting. She said she was ready to dedicate her life to the refugees like her grandmother had done. Smiled and took's hand. She told that she was proud of her. She told that her grandmother would be proud of her. She told that humanity was lucky to have someone like her, someone willing to be a protector, someone willing to bridge the gap between species. Over the next few months, and worked together to activate all the relay stations. They traveled from location to location and powered up the hidden devices. Each time they activated a station, the refugee network grew stronger. Each station that came online brought more refugees within communication range. The signal spread like a web across the planet. The refugees began to organize. They began to coordinate their efforts. They began to plan for their eventual escape from Earth or their integration into human society. Some of them wanted to stay on Earth and live among humans. Others wanted to build their own communities. Still others wanted to travel to other planets and start new civilizations. Became the central hub of this network. She managed communications between different refugee groups. She helped them solve problems. She helped them access resources. She helped them survive and eventually thrive. The device in room 237 became the most important communication station on the planet. It was the heartbeat of the refugee network. One day, told something important. She said that the government was getting close to discovering what they were doing. She said that satellite imagery had detected unusual energy signatures at several of the relay stations. She said that the military was investigating. She said that they did not have much time left before the truth about the relay network would be exposed. The government arrived at the motel on a Tuesday morning. There were 12 military vehicles and 40 soldiers. They surrounded the building before even knew they were coming. She was in room 237 when the soldiers burst through the front doors of the motel. She heard their boots on the concrete. She heard them shouting commands to each other. Did not run, she did not hide. She simply stood next to the device and waited. She had known this day would come. Her grandmother had known it too. The only question was whether would be brave enough to face it like her grandmother had. A soldier kicked open the door to room 237. He pointed a gun at. Behind him came a man in a suit. The man looked official and important. He introduced himself as Agent Tors. He said he was with a government organization that had never heard of. He said that organization dealt with matters that most people did not know existed. Agent Tors told to step away from the device. He said the device would be confiscated and studied. He said she was being arrested for treason and for harboring illegal aliens on United States soil. He said she had the right to remain silent. Did not argue, she did not protest. She simply raised her hands and let the soldiers handcuff her. But before they took her away, she did one final thing. She sent one last message through the device to the refugee network. She sent the message that they had discussed many times. The message that meant the plan was moving forward. The message that meant it was time to go public. The message spread through the relay network in seconds. It reached every refugee hiding place on the planet. It reached every protector that was still alive and free. The message was simple. The circle is complete. Begin phase 2. Bring the truth into the light. Within hours, refugees around the world began revealing themselves. They appeared on television. They appeared in public places. They showed their true forms, letting humans see that they were real, that they had always been here, that they had always been worthy of protection. The media went crazy. News stations broadcast images of aliens walking through cities. They showed refugees speaking to humans. They showed families that included both humans and refugees. The truth that had been hidden for so long was suddenly exposed to the entire world. The government tried to contain the situation. They tried to arrest refugees and shut down the relay stations. But there were too many. The relay network was too spread out. The refugees were too numerous. The truth was too big to be put back in the box. Spent 2 weeks in military custody before the international community demanded her release. Governments from all over the world called for the refugees to be recognized as a protected species under international law. They called for the protectors to be forgiven for breaking laws to help the refugees. The pressure became too great for the government to ignore. In the end, a deal was made. The refugees would be allowed to live openly on Earth. They would be given legal protection and legal rights. They would be allowed to establish their own communities. The protectors would be pardoned for their past actions. The relay stations would be seized by the government but preserved as historical monuments. Was released, she was given a medal for her service to international peace, but she did not care about medals. She only cared about one thing. She cared about being released so she could go back to the motel. When she returned to room 237, she found the device still intact. The military had decided not to destroy it. Instead, they had decided to turn it into a museum. A place where humans could learn about the refugee network. A place where humans could understand the sacrifice that people like's grandmother had made. The government asked to be the curator of the museum. They asked her to tell the story of her grandmother and the relay network. They asked her to help humans understand that sometimes breaking the law was necessary to protect life. Sometimes sacrifice was the price of being brave. Accepted, she spent the next year writing books about her grandmother. She gave speeches explaining why she had chosen to help the refugees. She explained the philosophy behind the Protector Network. She explained that protection of life was a moral imperative that was more important than government laws or national borders. Her story became famous. School children learned about in history class. Colleges taught her work in classes about ethics and morality. She became a symbol of what humans could be when they chose to be brave. She became proof that one person could make a difference. She became evidence that protecting the helpless was worth any sacrifice. But did not forget where her work came from. She did not forget that she was only continuing what her grandmother had started. She did not forget that her grandmother had died in prison so the refugees could live. Every day, went to the motel and stood in room 237. Every day, she looked at the device and remembered. The refugees never forgot either. They created a memorial at the motel. They carved the names of all the humans who had died protecting them. They carved her grandmother's name in a place of honor. They created a day of remembrance that was celebrated across the refugee network every single year. The day was called the Day of Courage. It celebrated humans who had chosen sacrifice over selfishness. One day, 20 years after restarted the device, she received a visitor. The visitor was a young refugee who had been born after the truth came out. The refugee was studying history in college. The refugee had written a thesis about the protectors. The refugee wanted to thank in person. The refugee told that their entire species owed humans a debt that could never be repaid. The refugee said that if grandmother had not taken the risk, and if had not been brave enough to continue her work, the entire refugee population would have been destroyed. The refugee said that and her grandmother were heroes not just to refugees, but to everyone who believed in protecting the helpless. Cried when she heard these words. She cried because her grandmother was not alive to hear them. She cried because she understood that sometimes the people who do the most important work in the world never live to see the results. Sometimes they die never knowing if their sacrifice meant anything. But now she knew that her grandmother's sacrifice had meant everything. She knew that her grandmother's choice to help the refugees had changed the entire history of the galaxy. She knew that humanity had proven itself to be something special. Humanity had proven that it could be trusted. Humanity had proven that compassion was strength and not weakness. Walked out of room 237 for the last time as its curator. She was older now. Her life had been dedicated to this work. She had never married. She had never had children of her own. She had given everything to protect the refugees, just like her grandmother had done. But when she looked around the motel, she saw something different now. She saw a place of hope. She saw a place where humans and refugees had learned to work together. She saw the beginning of something new. She saw a future where different species could live in peace. She saw what her grandmother had dreamed of. The motel was no longer abandoned. It was filled with visitors every day. Humans and refugees came together to learn about the past and plan for the future. Room 237 still held the device, preserved behind glass, a symbol of sacrifice and courage. The tapping sound that had terrified so long ago had become a symbol of hope. It represented a species that was willing to reach out across the darkness and help those in need. Looked at the memorial plaque with her grandmother's name carved into it. She placed her hand on the stone. She spoke softly to the memory of her grandmother. She said, "You were right, grandmother. Humanity is capable of being brave. I have learned that from you. I will carry your message forward. I will teach others what you taught me, that protection of life is more important than safety, that sacrifice is the price of being human, that choosing to help is choosing to matter." The motel stood quiet around her. The desert stretched out beyond it. The stars shone bright in the night sky. Somewhere out there in that vast darkness, the refugee network continued to grow and thrive. Somewhere out there, other species were learning that humans could be trusted, that humans could be brave, that humans could choose compassion. Understood now why her grandmother had made the choice she had made. She understood because she had made the same choice. And now that choice was changing the entire galaxy. One person, one decision, one act of bravery, it had been enough to change everything. The story of and her grandmother and the motel would be told for generations. It would inspire others to be brave. It would inspire others to protect the helpless. It would inspire others to believe that one person could make a difference. The inheritance that had received from her grandmother was not just a motel. It was a responsibility. It was a legacy. It was proof that humans were capable of greatness when they chose to be brave. Felt fear and excitement at the same time. She knew that this was coming. She knew that eventually the refugees would not be able to hide. She knew that humanity would have to face the truth about what lived on their planet. But she was ready. She had inherited her grandmother's courage. She had built something incredible. She had created a network that could not be destroyed. The refugee network now had thousands of members spread across the planet. The relay stations were too numerous to shut down all at once. The truth was too big to keep hidden anymore. Stood in room 237 and looked at the device that her grandmother had helped build. She understood now why her grandmother had made the choices she had made. She understood why sacrifice and bravery mattered. She understood that sometimes protecting life was more important than protecting yourself. The device hummed around her, alive and powerful and full of purpose. The refugees sent her gratitude through the connection. They sent her their hope. They sent her their dreams of a future where they could live openly on Earth. They sent her their love. Us, humanity, is our friend. Stood in room 237 and accepted her inheritance. She accepted the burden. She accepted the choice. She accepted everything that her grandmother had started. She was no longer just a college student. She was now a guardian of life. She was a protector of the helpless. She was a human who had chosen to be brave. Started the engine and drove into town. She needed to find a place to stay and think. She needed time to understand what she had discovered. She needed to decide if she had the courage to be like her grandmother. She needed to decide if she could be a protector of life instead of just a girl going to college. The motel disappeared in her rear view mirror as she drove away. Behind her, in room 237, the device remained silent and dark, waiting for someone to turn it back on, waiting for someone to give the refugees hope again. On a shelf beside the machine found a book. It was old and the pages were yellow, but it had been kept clean. She opened the book and started reading. The first words were written in her grandmother's handwriting. They said, "The refugee ship arrived 3 days ago, and I made a choice that will change everything." His hands shook as she held the book. She did not understand what these words meant, but she knew that her quiet life was about to change. The secret of room 237 was about to become her problem to solve. The mystery that her family had hidden for 5 years was finally being revealed.